All right. Hi, everyone. If you're settling at home or you need to get something to drink, now's the perfect time. We have quite a few members running a little late, and we have a substantial amount of information, I think, tonight. So let's give folks a couple minutes. Well, Ebenezer, can you make me a co-host, please? Thank you.
Can I get co-host as well so I can share screen later?
Yeah, just put it for all panelists. All right, I got you.
Being one is two. How could I be someone else? Don't lose your grip on me, my dear. Don't let this slip. Don't hide your fears. Don't close your eyes from truth, my love. Don't be surprised that I was good for you.
Barbara.
Cause you made us blind.
We got Debbie.
You were good for me. Things were black and white. Now will be our time. I was good for you. Color made us blind. You were good for me. Things were black and white. Now will be our time.
Angel, was this the meeting that Simari said she couldn't make?
I don't think so.
Sometimes unstable. I know exactly what you mean. I feel unable to explain the good you bring. Like Cain and Abel, it's the ones you trust the most. Don't let this slip. Don't hide your fears. Don't close your eyes from truth, my love. Don't be surprised that I was good for you.
Just need one more. Oh, there we go.
Could've made us blind.
This writer, there we go.
You were good for me. Things were black and white.
And Barbara.
Now will be
Yep.
our time. I was good for you.
All right. Good evening, folks. I'll stop our little nude sesh.
I really liked the music.
All right. Good evening. Good afternoon. I feel like it's been ages since I've seen some of you guys. But I don't think that's the case. All right. Welcome to our April exec. We just reached quorum. Just for clarification, Jumirna is excused tonight, won't be joining. She will be taking minutes. But in the case that we do need to do a roll call, Barbara, if you can be ready. I know, I'm sorry. I caught you in the middle of a love fest at your dog, but just in case there's a need for a roll call, which I doubt, we'll have that. And then I know Wayne is joining on a little bit late, but we are here. So I hope everyone has the agenda. We have a pretty substantive administrative meeting tonight. And I don't have my agenda in front of me. I'm so sorry about that. Let me just pull it up. All right, cool. So we'll call to this meeting to order at 6:43 p.m. I hope everyone's feeling good. I know there was tons of, holidays this month and a great weekend weather and vacation with school and kids and all that. So I hope folks had a good time. One second, I'm getting a message. Did anybody get a conflict message with this meeting tonight? That it was like another host had another meeting?
No.
No? That's odd.
I mean, there were multiple messages about the scheduling of this meeting, some of which were wrong, but not that there was a different meeting.
Right. Yeah, that's different. That's not the one that went out at 5:30. Sorry, yeah, that's Faye who's having a hard time getting in, and Simari will be joining us shortly. So anyway, I hope folks had a great time with family and friends this month. To dive into my board chair report, I would like to pull up. We're going to be doing lots of sharing tonight on the screen. And if I can find I always have this issue with all my windows, guys. Let me pull up my drive again. Let's see here. Oh, wait a minute. Where'd they go? Oh. Okay, fair. Got you. That is odd. My files are just. Sorry, guys, if you can just give me 1 second, let me respond to Faye, who has just blown up my messages on my computer. Wow, this is really odd. My entire presentation is missing.
That's a bummer.
I can, yeah, wait a minute. I'm like, wait, let me not. Shit. Where'd it go? Oh, excuse my French. I know we're live. I guess I can do the reverse. Or you know what? Actually, Ebenezer, maybe you want to start with your report while I do mine, while I look for my piece.
Sure,
that
sure.
work for you?
I just sent an email to Faye with another link to see if she can get in, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Talk with her. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Let's go straight to my report. I participated in 2 meetings hosted by the New York State Attorney General's Office and the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation regarding illegal pesticides campaign. The Attorney General and the Environmental Conservation, they are determined to eliminate from Washington Heights and Inwood the selling of Trespasito, Tempo, et cetera, and they are having a campaign to create meetings to create a campaign designed by the community. As a matter of fact, they're looking for the input of community-based organizations. There is a flyer that it was created. Okay, okay, I mute Fed. Very good. And this afternoon we have the second meeting, and the third meeting going to be on May 1st. Asking why people prefer this illegal pesticide and why people are buying it, but also the damage and the risk that happen for children's and pets, et cetera. Also, it was discussed the fact that the people who sell illegal pesticides on the street, that's the way of living for them. What's going to happen is you prohibit them if they don't sell it, what they're going to be doing. So if anyone is willing, to participate or have any idea, please let me know. The next meeting will be on May 1st. We have location for our May and June hybrid meetings. One location for May would be the Roseberry Pavilion, and the other room for the June meeting going to be the 7th floor at the School of Nurse. The 7th floor of the School of Nurse require, if we're going to have food there, we need to get it for day cater. We cannot bring food there if we want to have it. And finally, the office budget and the wish list is April. We are almost around to finish the fiscal year, and we need to decide as soon as possible before this month go, how we want to modify our budget and what we want to buy. What is our wish list to spend, the surplus that we have in our budget for fiscal year 2023. Thank you very much. This is the end of my report. I see that I have a question from Liz Reader. Liz?
Yeah, 2 things. One, I totally get that the folks who are selling, cockroach and whatever remedies on the street, that's how they make their living. But the idea that, oh, that's how they make their living, so we shouldn't enforce the law around this particular kind of illegal vending. I mean, we wouldn't say for people who are robbing people at gunpoint, oh, well, that's how they make their living, so why would we enforce that? I mean, the fact that that's how they make their living is not a compelling argument for not enforcing that particular thing, because, as you point out, the dangers of those pesticides to the folks who use them who may not be aware of this. And my second thing, which might be more germane for the treasurer's report, but in terms of the potential costs of catering meetings, if it's held at the School of Nursing, I don't know if we necessarily want to do this as a regular practice all the time, but if we have a budget surplus, maybe catering the June meeting is not a bad way to use a little bit of that.
Sure, understood. I agree. Liz, the thing with the illegal vendor, that is the way of living, it's not that they don't want to enforce the law because of that. It's the other way around. We're going to enforce the law. We're gonna displace them, but what's going to happen with them? That was the discussion there, and it came from the representative of the office of the Attorney General. You know, when you apply this law, this is going to happen. What we're going to do with them. So what they want is idea. What should we be doing, or what the community would like to. Very complex topic, discussing, selling illegal thing that can cause dangers to children and pets. But at the same time, people doing that on desperate because they are full of roaches and mice and mouse, and the landlord do not provide this service. Plus, what you buy it in the supermarket may not be suitable. So it's very complex, it's very complex. So if you're welcome to participate in the ideas. If you have any ideas, I send it to them. Debbie.
Thanks, Ebenezer. I just wanted to follow up because I know it's something you worked on a lot going back years. The Step Street at 181st, I know that there is somebody who's been following up with you and with me and has come to a meeting, I guess stepping into the very big shoes of Jean Poggi. And so have you been involved with her and sort of what's happening there?
Well, I believe that Jean passed away. That's what.
Right, but the woman who's been following.
She called the office a few times and left a message with Janelle. I haven't been spoken with her. I called back, but I didn't get it. And I would like to speak with her if you have the contact information. So to meet her on site would be the best, because it's the same issue. I passed by the other day. The steps are still in disrepair, and the garden, et cetera, et cetera. And last time I drove by, it was on a scaffold covering the Step Street. So if you have,
we're all under scaffold. Okay, so
Yeah.
I'll send that back to you because I think she's been trying to contact us collectively for several months. So again, I'm happy to see that somebody's stepping in because it's been kind of quiet on those things.
Mhm.
And by those things, I mean, and Dolphin Park, but I don't even know who's worrying about that. And so if we need to coordinate with DOT, like, when is the DSC? The next one?
This Thursday, this coming Thursday.
All right, so let's try to connect with her, and I'll send whatever messaging I have from her so that
Yes.
maybe you can follow up at DSC. I have some information that I'll give during my update, Ebenezer. So if you're not here for that, I will send that to you about a walkthrough we did with DOT.
On that location.
Yeah, no, something else, but I'm just in case you don't stay for the whole meeting, I'll try to write a summary for you so you're aware of what happened
Okay.
and where it happened.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. This is the end of my report. Going back to you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and thanks for the quick patience. Let me time myself because there's a lot tonight. All right, so we're in April, meaning we wrapped up our first quarter of the year. I thought that it could be appropriate within executive committee to just kind of have some quick kind of like quarterly recaps where we've been. And so I'm ready to share some of that on screen. And then formally, of course, for our board membership through the newsletter down the road of this year. But I wanted to kind of just share for background because I think we dove in so quickly in the first quarter in January. I know I was incredibly overwhelmed learning in January, like being behind the curtain, if you will, of chairship. And so in January, I think that like first week, the elected officers, we all met really to kind of just connect. Some of us haven't really had discussions online and to understand what our roles are. So it was a mix of team building, looking at what our responsibilities are per the city charter, per the bylaws, and then really kind of taking into account what we've heard from the board in terms of what those priorities could look like, right? And what are some action items. So I'm going to quickly share my screen. And I hope everyone can see it, because sometimes, can everyone see my screen? Yeah, okay, great. For some reason, hold on. Here we go. Cool. So, and I'll just kind of quickly walk through what we have as our priority areas. And obviously, because we started in January and we were kind of still understanding there aren't necessarily goals, but I would say more priority areas that we figured we would have more goals down the road. Some very kind of clear goals and more so tactics or strategies of what we wanted to implement. And so the 5 core areas that we know are our responsibilities are meeting procedures, membership standings and engagement, community engagement, that includes some agency touch points, and last and certainly not least, the staff oversight and coordination. So for example, in being able to have some goals for meeting procedures, we were talking about improving coordination and planning of committee business and presentations and guests, if you will, but also creating more exciting and forward-thinking meetings. And so part of what that looked like, right, in action is having a run of show, making sure we're having efficient and fair time, creating guidance for committee chairs and for electeds on how to improve their reports, right? As we know that the elected portion used to be lengthy. There are some points that could have been improved. And so having more guidance there. And then I can see, and improving familiarity with Robert's Rules of Order. So that's something that Kathy, that I, Angel, and Simari really took forth. And as we've all experienced, that target area is on track. We've consistently implemented a run of show, and we've averaged general meeting times that are less than 3 hours. We have maintained stacks and timing impeccably, so that's a huge shout out to the team. Committee chair reports, as you saw within our meeting and within the general, we have had asks in terms of being able to keep our reports tighter, more focused on calls to action, being able to use the newsletter as a vehicle for that, right? Because we can't say it all in 3 minutes or even in 5. And we also did submit in January, very early, to all of our elected reps, some guidance in terms of what folks would not necessarily prefer, but what's more effective to hear from them in the space of the 3-minute mark that they have. And then, of course, supplementing that with links in the chat. So, I think that we've been making a lot of progress in this area. Some things that to definitely for the rest of the year and for next quarter specifically is still making more room for improvement in terms of our committee chair reports, especially in our exec, right? So are we able to plan, kind of more practice sharing, how maybe we can have designated months in the year where we devote more time based on, for a certain committee based on the work that they've been doing through the year. So like a spotlight. And then, of course, Robert's Rule of Order. We are still looking to implement, within the newsletter, that link. So I've tapped Jim and Jumirna for that. We also have the ability to create really short videos. So those are just kind of some ideas on meeting procedures and some of the progress we've made. Related to membership standings and engagement. Oh man, I think this is the wrong file. Man, I don't know what's going on with Mercury this season, but I'll verbally share. So being able to have a planning session with secretary and assistant secretaries on our attendance processes, creating an onboarding process, and social events for board members. So we are on track in this area. we have tentatively discussed, Agency Maria and I, in terms of prepping for our new cohort or our new class this spring, hosting our new member orientation on Saturday, January 3rd. It's in pencil as a thought, to be able to give us room to plan backwards for a really robust orientation session. And we can also be able to bring in folks who came in earlier this year who missed out. So that's something that is, kind of targeted in very early planning, still to be discussed. Of course, social events, we had our first. The next one will be in June. So tapping that group again. And I know the call went out for anybody who did want to join that host committee. And last and certainly not least, the secretaries and I have met a few times and talking about creating tools that support all members. So, we have our resolution template and our resolution writing gurus, if you will, to be able to support membership. But also, how do we create tools for folks to write minutes and what those needs are? And working right now what those processes are going to be for example, because the office staff has done the attendance and has done those notifications for the last 2.5-3 years since we've been virtual, and so we're still in the process of looking at how are those responsibilities being distributed. So I think we're good on track here. I have a lot to share on community engagement. I'm going to leave that last. And in staff oversight, being able to conduct what is a SWOT, or essentially you're looking at the strengths, the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So it's an assessment tool and a needs assessment of our office staff. I meet bi-weekly, but talk almost every 2 days with Ebenezer in terms of the office and improving some of those coordinations. So we're very much in that getting to know stage of what's going on and still building. So I believe, in the summer, I'll be able to have a much tighter needs assessment and a picture for the executive committee in terms of our office staff and what the needs are there. I've also been meeting with fellow Manhattan chairs in terms of understanding how other boards work, not just their bylaws, not just their office functions, but what those relationships look like and what are, lessons that we can learn from them. So I'm hoping to be able to have that later on this year all in one report. And last and not least, being able to develop a press roster for CB12 was on our wish list here. It's a weird place to hold it, but given that our communication channels are through the office and the chair, that's why the press roster is here. Richard Allman has volunteered to do our kind of Google alerts for any press hits that are related to CB12. So that's something we'll see in our next newsletters, fingers crossed. But this is still a project that I would say is on track for probably Q3 of this year. I'm going to pause there before I go into community engagement, because that has to do with part 2 of my presentation. I see a hand, Mary.
It's difficult for me to look through notes like this and see acronyms that I have no idea what it means.
Yeah,
SWOT, I don't have any clue what that is. It should be spelled out, if we're expected to understand it all.
Yeah, that's what I described as a strength, weakness, opportunities, threats. This was just quickly to share, but I'm going to have it not in acronyms. And thank you for that, because we should always have plain speak when I send this to the executive committee.
Okay.
Okay. Last and certainly not least in our bucket of priorities was community engagement. This is something that on the board, we talk often and have debated often. So part of that looked at, what are our partnership rosters? What is the directory, not just online, but for example, the directory of agencies and who's the contact there. Some of folks, particularly folks who've been chairs for a very long time, have that, on speed dial, if you will, or on their favorites, but others don't. And so to be able to have more sustainability, more ease of access, and really for everyone on the who are chairs or even assistant chairs, being able to develop that So that's something that we're still talking through. I think that, for this summer when we're on summer break and the office really is be able to take that step back and work on these projects, it'll be a great point. And I forgot to mention in the staff oversight and coordination, of course, being able to have our general inbox and have our SharePoint and being able to still kind of work on those infrastructure tools that allows the staff to work, I think, more effectively. Okay. So that's kind of where we are. We are on track with a lot of the goals. I think for, what was a 2-month period with an entirely new team, I'm really proud of what we've been able to do. We obviously have a lot more to do, but I think, in this first quarter, we've learned a lot, not just from other chairs, not just from, our own office staff, but from other city agencies like the MBPO and beyond. The last piece tied to community engagement is that one of the folks in talking around like what our approach is in community engagement that I was able to meet with is a project called the Service Design Studio under EDC. And here we go. Wait, here we go. All right, let me reshare my screen again. I don't know if anyone here on this call's heard of it before. No, okay. I never heard of it before, and like, wow, what a resource. I actually came across it in trying to look at our branding, right? So branding, flyers, all of these things are stuff that we've discussed at the board in terms of our marketing and being able to need it. And so I came across this project. So their work is called Civic Service Design, which means that they seek to understand what the needs are of folks who use public services and what are the changes that need to happen to be able to meet that better, right? So they really look at, they've partnered, for example, with ACS. They traditionally work with city agencies, and look at, okay, if you have this new initiative, if you have this new project and you're trying to bring more members in from the public, how they really kind of piecemeal and map it out for you. And they look at, where there are strengths or what steps have to be built along the way to be able to scale. So they take the idea of kind of like design, right? It's not just about how something looks, but it's about how it works, right? And design that for them. What they offer is, they really clarify, and they have lots of tools available online. I can share that after, around complicated systems and processes. So, something like land use can be quite complicated. So they're able to kind of break that down for city agencies and to empower their own staff or city workers to do that. They make sure that everybody understands what processes are. So I know I'm kind of using a lot of jargon in the same thing, but essentially, right, like if we're all going to do outreach, we all have to have the same definition for what outreach is, right? We need to be clarified what the steps are, A, B, C, D in order to get there. And then also making sure that these are solutions that are reflective of the people who are going to use them. So, let's say if it were to be something like our SLA process, right? That we know that this is something that works for small businesses, right? We're not going to make a process in the office staff that is incredibly cumbersome for somebody to navigate, right? And then of course that like our resources are allocated appropriately. So I'm saying all this to say that in conversation with them, they've pitched a proposal, and it would be a pilot. We would actually be the first community board they've ever worked with. So they're incredibly excited about that, as well as am I. And so the goal is to support us in understanding and designing what community outreach and engagement is. Something that I think is no surprise. We often have had debates about, well, community outreach and engagement needs to look like this, right? And we have chairs and we have members who have vast experience in that area, right? And understand it this way. Other folks feel like, well, my role or the role of the board should be, or outreach on the board should look like this. And then we also have folks who have never done community outreach, so they don't know what it should or could look like. And so the idea that is that they would engage in about a 6-month project with us to define that, to map it out for Community Board 12, right? And so these are some of the questions, for example, that they would respond with us, right? What's working, what's not working, what are factors that are holding back residents from attending our meetings? So when I mean community outreach, generally, I'm not talking just about people coming to a licensing meeting or people coming to a hearing at parks. We're also talking about how do we bring more people to our meetings and have them stay here, right? How do we not just have the 4 folks who come every meeting, while we love and appreciate their commitment, but we also have sectors of our district who should be at our meetings and are not. So they're going to help us unpack that, right? And what the reasons are and what are the shifts that we can make to be able to meet the needs, right? So these are just some of the quick questions. Last but not, and this is just some stuff I copied from the proposal, is being able to kind of kick off with our scope, which they shared here. Obviously, I know we're off in the summer, so part of it would be, what are some surveys that they would do with community residents, with board members, really kind of like their own fact finding of understanding that. And what they would do is something called a journey map for Community Board 12. And when we return in the fall, being able to kind of vet that and start testing that out in time for our fall meetings, especially for our budget hearings, and anything else that comes that way. So that's my very quick attempt to be succinct description of this pilot project. Yeah, go ahead, Debbie.
And we can absolutely have this conversation offline. But I would just sort of 2 thoughts that aren't necessarily applied thoughts, but this is fantastic, by the way, and what an interesting opportunity. I would sort of say, though, when we talk about the goal, like the idea of like outreach that results in people coming and staying, I would sort of say, like, let's spend some time on whether that's the goal. I might say, for example, that the goal allows people to understand what it is, because most people don't even know it exists, or that if they have an issue that has to do with a New York City agency services and a deficit or an opportunity, that they know that their place to come is here. So they don't come all the time, but they know to come when something is in that area. So it's sort of also defining what is success. And then the one thing that I worry about in this, and it sort of is a thought that I had when you were talking about how you want to approach the new member orientation, is we don't have consistency. It's always hard, even for board members, to understand until you've really been at it a long time, of like, what exactly we do and how do we do it and how do we move the needle? And for people that come from an advocacy background, understanding how that part of themselves coincides or doesn't, goes or doesn't go with the community board role, which is yet another role. It is not the same one. And sort of, so that we need to also think about how we get consistent in the why somebody should come, which also involves us really understanding our roles a little bit more consistently than I think we do. Because what happens is, if people come and then we're off on tangents,
that's time.
then you start to just people it needs to all be on strategy, I guess is what I'm saying.
I hear that. I'm gonna have Liz and then I'll clarify something.
Real quick, Isidro needs to be promoted to panelist.
Right. He's been hanging out for a while. He needs to be promoted. I just wanted to say that I've been on the board for a ridiculously long time. And these 2 presentations are, in the aggregate, the most optimistically professional I have seen from board leadership in my quarter century plus of being on and around the board. So thank you. And many different ways of fine tuning. Debbie's point is entirely correct. There's how do we get people here? How do we keep people here? And how do we sort of juggle the periodic involvement of people come, they go, they come back, they whatever. And of also understanding that for a lot of people, their definition of good community engagement is, did someone ask me? You know, so if I heard about it, if somebody asked me, that was good community engagement. And if I didn't hear about it, or nobody asked me, or I didn't know about it, then that's bad community engagement. And, you know, that we do need to kind of be mindful that sometimes everybody's busy. Not everybody can make it to every meeting. Not everybody, we're never going to have 100% message penetration of whatever. And there's always going to be people who are left out. So part of what we need to do as board members and as committee chairs is to tune into what are the voices that we think we might be missing, and how do we bring that into a meeting, even if those people aren't there.
Thank you. I'm gonna have Isidro go, and then I'll address kind of both questions, clarify something, and then we'll move on.
2 minutes on the clock.
So thank you so much, Catherine. And I think that your leadership on this role in trying to connect and be more engaged with our community, I think Liz kind of highlighted the fact that, you know, it's good that we do this. Oftentimes we find that members and residents are busy, and I think that by finding a way to have them engage, however creative that might be, it will always help the community board. I'm finding a little bit more difficulty now, surprisingly enough, that one of our local precincts is not coming to a licensing. And that is troublesome, because I feel that we have to have the presence at all times of the precinct. We rely a lot on them, and it's only fair that if we put in the time, that they also put in the time that is required. They are required to show up to make sure that they contribute to our community. So how I can assist, always feel free and let me know how I can help. Think that I'll be a team player in this effort. So thank you so much, Catherine, and the rest of you.
I'm gonna take a listen. And Isidro, I'm sorry that that's happening. We'll definitely set up a meeting with the commander. But I myself haven't met with him.
2 minutes.
Yeah, just I won't take us long. How are you? Look, it's just like, and I'm gonna use a sports analogy. It's like baseball. You know, at times, you know, the players or the managers, you know, been there so long that they stop connecting with the players, and it happens everywhere. It comes a point in time in which the message gets stale, if you will, and I think that the continuous renovation of the message and the continuous renovation of faces and people that are willing to get out there and connect with newer residents. We have, by percentage, look at our board. If that's a good example, you know, more than 50% of the board are new, or less than 2 years. So that goes with anything. It's just, you know, the renew. We have to repackage and rebrand us so that we can connect with the newer parts of our community that were 10 years ago were teenagers. Now they're professionals. So the message is different. You know, we're not going to connect that way. So we have to kind of like analyze and look in depth at ourselves as an organization. So we can start reconnecting with our community members.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, and good evening, everyone. Yes, Catherine, this is really, really, you know, very helpful. And like many of our colleagues saying, I have never seen, you know, something so structured like this. This is what this charge is very is well structured, is very well organized. And I sincerely hope that following each of these boxes and what you intended for us to execute as a, you know, as a committee or as a board, Probably the next thing following that is that you may want it to ask individual folks the way in what exactly would be the task that you would like for each of us to help you materialize and execute, each of these tasks that you envision for the board to fulfill, But I want to say congratulations. This is really something that I have never seen before, and it's very well structured. Thank you.
Thank you, Faye. Before I go to Marielle, if you just because I might lose my train of thought here. Around the service design studio, I have to say it is a free resource. I found them thinking that they did design as in marketing and graphic and branding, and they do program design or civic service design in this case, since it's applicable to government. And it's really, again, their mission is around access and public participation. So I didn't mean necessarily retention as in, always having, but you're absolutely right. There's ebbs and flows in terms of people coming to the board. And what we want to make sure is that we're that the right voices, or the voices who should be present, who need to be present at times are, and how can we improve the process for that, knowing that every chair, and this is about sustainability, right? Because we're not all going to be here 20 years from now. We have the changes that happen in the charter. And so being able to set a process so that no matter if I come from a background of outreach or not, I'm very clear how as a chair, or how as a member, we can censor these voices, how we do outreach and how we define engagement at the board. And part of that does go hand in hand with design, right? Because yes, something is not just about it looking great, but it's also about how the message is effective, right? We all recognize that Con Edison blue. We recognize that logo, and with a million more, brands that we can think of. So I'm going to go to Marielle. There's a part 2 to that, which is around design that is tied to Michelle's report. So I just want to take Marielle, and then we'll transition to Michelle, if that's okay with everyone.
Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, we'll also acknowledge what everyone has mentioned as well. I'm a program manager by training, so I get very excited when I see these things. So well done to you. My question is around, I recall, I think it was last year, so there was an intention to bring on, I think the term was like community fellows or so on. And it would be I remember it was with some of the funding that we have to bring on members of the community for a part-time role to help spread the word in terms about the community, kind of, survey people, have that face-to-face engagement. Just wondering to see if there's any opportunity, one, if there's still interest in that, two, if we have the funds for that, and three, if there's a bit that can try to be intertwined into some of this work that can see that complementing some of this work laid out here. Thanks.
Yeah, there's absolutely appetite. I think there's a couple things that you mentioned that's key and that we've learned, not just through Service Design Studio, but talking to vendors and really being behind the curtain. When we receive funding and how we got funding in terms of grant funding that allows us to contract, let's say, or stipend someone for a special project, the timing of that's important, right? So for example, the Carmen de la Rosa funding came in I think February, versus, and the lead time isn't sufficient to bring people in. But the other piece is that, what are they giving? What are they working? And the thing that I've learned is that there is a lack of, we don't have the tools, quite frankly. There's a lack of cohesion in our branding that I've been studying and as I've been working and contacting different vendors. So there's not one CB12 logo that's effective or usable, let's say, for a Link NYC or even a Subway ad. right? And this is not to throw shade if anybody here was the one that did it. But it's just that, you know, what the tools are, right? What that looks like is so important because that's what makes the message effective. So how we talk about CB12, how it is consistently pitched, no matter what member or staff person says it, isn't in place. You know, yes, we have our city charter definition. We even have a little bit online, but when you read that, that doesn't resonate and that doesn't, that's not plain speak enough, right? Like it doesn't tell people enough of what we do and why we're an important space. On top of it, you know, we don't have those flyers and marketing materials that say CB12 and speak CB12. And so branding, the rebranding, the marketing, the design of all of those tools is so important if we were to have anybody to do outreach for us physically. And that is part of the part 2 that I'm bringing tonight. And after Michelle does her fiscal presentation.
Great, thank you.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I was screen sharing. Off to you, Michelle. And sorry, I did give warning today. Was a lot of admin today.
Right, Michelle, I'm gonna put 10 minutes on the clock for you.
Thanks. Let me put 10 minutes as well so I can take a look at it.
All right.
Okay, so let me go ahead and share. This should be it. Do you guys see my screen here?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So thank you, Madam Chair. Hello to everybody this evening. I'm going to walk you through the treasurer's report as well as, you know, some sort of high level information on how we propose to spend the rest of the surplus. Just starting from the report at the beginning, high level, I generally like to just give you information on, you know, the date of the data and where we're at in the fiscal year. So data was pulled on April 12th, and we are pretty much 80% through the fiscal year. We've got about 2 more months left. That's why we're kind of in this rush to basically figure out where we are going to put the rest of our funds, because after the fiscal year ends, the budget sort of rolls over and not all of it. Some of the unspent stuff will not necessarily come back to us, right? So this is the time to do it. We've got 3 different sections: personnel services, which are the salaries for the staff; OTPS, other than personal services, which are, you know, the supplies for the office and other expenses. And then we've got the lease. So those are 3 buckets of money. And generally how we read this here is you can see the budgeted amounts here. From our original budget, you can see how much has been liquidated so far as of, you know, the 12th of April. And then you can see what's left, which is the uncommitted balance. So high level, this is the report. And I'll kind of dive into the details here then. So I usually like to just look at month over month changes for myself to figure out what we've liquidated since the March report. So for us, we have an increase in liquidated total for these PS codes. It's 001, which is the full-time positions, 042, the longevity differential. That, as we've found out, is what's paid to folks who are staff members for over a certain amount of time. They get a longevity differential as well as their salary. And then 061 is supper money for when staff work overtime. They get amount of money to buy dinner. So these are all expected, you know, since last month. And to talk about the OTPS code increases, we've had some increases in telecoms, which is our phone bill, I believe. 412, which is rentals, which is the rental for a copier, as well as 700 fixed charges general. 700 is kind of interesting. I've learned more about it this month. And so, you know, high level, what's happening here since last month is Ebenezer has moved $5,000 of the Carmen de la Rosa money, which used to be in 499 over to 700. And 700 is basically what is used to, pay in advance. So Ebenezer would basically front the money and it would get reimbursed. 700 with the code 1000 means these are advance payments coming from our budget that has been given to us. And then from 1001 is the advance payments from the donation. So like if the Carmen de la Rosa money comes through, it would come through from 499 to 700, which is, and code 1001. So you can kind of see the extra money's been basically moved here, and we've actually liquidated about $2,000 of it since I last gave you the report. And just to give you a sense of what we've liquidated on, it's a Zoom license renewal, which is about $500. It's the Chela's event, which was about $900, as well as translation services for the meetings and office cleaning. Total about $2,000 across all of these different items. So those are the amounts that have been liquidated. Future expenses that are in progress but not yet shown here are the rent payment to Columbia. You'll see that we have, still the full budget, and we've liquidated none of it. I believe Ebenezer is still working on finalizing that to make sure that we have all the details right before paying out. So I think there's a little bit more to do there. And in the last 4 minutes of my report, I basically want to talk through the surplus as well as how we want to spend it. So high level, we do continue to see that we will have an OTPS surplus, and we do continue to see that we will have a PS surplus, right? So just talking through some ideas for how we're going to use this. I want to just propose them, and I know as folks have questions, we'll get into it later. One of the things that has come up is a Zoom license for us, and that Zoom license would be about, the quote was about $5,000. That would give us, I think, the ability to hold additional meetings, as well as get more metrics about who is attending our Zoom. Right now, I believe we are using the Manhattan Borough President's Office Zoom, and we would like to be able to do some of that on our own. That would require like a more upgraded Zoom license. Another thing that has been proposed is these lapels, which basically show your name and your affiliation with CB12. That quote is about $200, I believe. The last piece is what Catherine was talking about at the end of her report, is a brand contract. We have gotten a quote, which would be about $4,000 to about $4,000 for phase 1 and $8,000, would be phase 1 and phase 2. And this is for an outside consultant to basically develop marketing material for us. Getting our brand together, creating templates for ads or, for flyers. All these would be through this branding contract. So I definitely want to highlight those. I know there's quite a lot of expense here, so we're trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to make it all fit within the budget? And happy to take more questions on these when my time is up. So that's the OTPS. I'm going to talk a little bit about the PS surplus as well. As mentioned before, it is a separate budget and it's not really able to be leveraged for board programming. I did find out that actually we can use it if we're purchasing basically supplies that the office team members will be using. So this is the proposal that I got from Ebenezer on what he would like to purchase from the office. It would be 3 laptops to replace the aging laptops that the staff are using, 2 hotspots. Those would be for members of CB12 who don't have reliable internet access. And so they could maybe check them out and, return them at a later date. 3 web cameras, those are also for the staff, as well as 3 adapters that they would use for their computers. The estimate that I put on it, which is very, very vague, is just high level is $5K. So that's That's for the office needs. Recently, we found out through MBPO that there's actually a set of raises going through for the DC 37 union members. This would include Chanel and Paola, and they will be receiving $3,000 lump sum as well as retroactive increases for 2021, 2022, and then increases in 2023, 2024, and 2025. And that I think was just recently negotiated. My understanding of these increases is that there would be an increase to our budget in the following year, so that we are not necessarily on the hook for, trying to pay. We wouldn't just continue to have the same budget amount of, $234,000 next year. That would actually increase to help us pay for the increase in PS. And the last thing I want to talk about, I know I don't have too much time left, is the part-time hire. I've been working with Catherine to have conversations with MVPO office about how much budget we would have and what that means in terms of hiring a part-time person. We are pretty tight in terms of like the space that we have left in our PS budget. So, we are, Ebenezer and Kath are continuing to work on this to really understand like what are the hours that we can afford within our budget, and like what would this person really be doing to make it worthwhile, given that we'd have to go through a month-long hiring process. So first we have to get approved with the, oops, that's my camera. So first we got to get approved, and then we go through the months-long hiring process, and then we figure out how, what this person is doing, and we have to retain them as well. So it's something we're continuing to work on. Okay, I will take questions then. Let's start with Wayne.
Wayne, you've got 2 minutes on the clock, sir.
Thanks. Just a question about branding. I mean, community boards are, an arm of city government, although they're not city agencies. And I know that, both at the city and state level, there's been a real push towards uniformity and conformity to messing. I'm just wondering, do we know, or do we have any guidance on what we can and cannot do in terms of branding for CB12?
Yeah, that was homework day one. And let me tell you, I was surprised at the lack of consistent uniform branding for the city. At the state level, there are very strict rules, down to like whatever agency you are, these are the only colors you can use.
And
that
your
doesn't
font.
And your font, yeah, I can send it. It's like 50 plus pages. So and I experienced that at the state. At the city, I was really surprised to learn that doesn't exist. I reached out to MBPO, reached out to Do It, spoke with council. Like, I've talked with the service design agency, have emailed old websites that no longer work. There are only rules as far as the New York City chunky logo, which is that real chunky NYC, and the seal of the city, which are all proprietary. The NYC chunky logo, if folks know what I'm even talking about, is not a community board logo. I looked at community boards all across Manhattan and the city, and everybody got a different logo. Some people look like they're in the fashion district as they are. Others have completely different things. And I've tried to get a sense of like, are there these pieces in the pipeline? And there isn't. So very fascinating mission, I will say that. And, and I've shared some of what I've learned in the lack of brand cohesion that are applicable, especially to community boards.
Are there other community?
Barbara, I think Liz's hand was up first.
Liz next. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Thanks.
2 minutes, Liz.
Yeah, to the point of branding, I love the idea of hiring somebody to help us out with that. My one concern is just making sure that whatever, if we do wind up going ahead and hiring somebody, whatever it is that they generate, be something that we can then use. that's not proprietary to them, that's not copyrighted by them, and that's not in some weird software that we don't know how to use, so that whatever it is that gets designed for us is stuff that we can, that everybody knows how to use and that we can easily use, and that outlives whatever is our contract with the provider.
Yeah, so let me share a little bit. I reached out to a few vendors through the MWBE. One that I had heard about from folks years ago in the restaurant space. It's a branding firm called Afternoon Culture. One who is bi-coastal and a resident of CB12. And precisely what I really liked from their proposal and pitch is that it's not just about, and that's why it's really important, it's not just about here's a flyer, here's a design. It's about creating the foundation and tools for the office staff. So what that looks like means our mailer light newsletter will have a branding, right? So branding, in essence, we all think about logos, colors, typeface, and there's a visual identity there, right? Like it's cemented the same way Coca-Cola is cemented for us. So imagine that for Board 12. What they would create as part of their proposal package is Canva templates, so that, let's say, Isidro, when the notice goes there, that notice could be way flyer, like the flyer could be flyer, more visible and coherent and bigger. And all that Chanel, Paola, or Ebenezer, or whoever in the office staff, all they need to do is plug in the details. They don't need to do anything else because these templates have already been created for them. You know, another thing that they're adding is presentation decks, right? So anytime we need to do presentations at CB12s or any committee chair there. And one that I think you'll all appreciate is flyer design. So having flyer templates so that if you have a special hearing, a community event, whatever that is, the office staff already has the structure for it. And, you know, it doesn't take committees hours on end or trying to figure out who could do something, and it doesn't look amazing, you know, it doesn't necessarily look the same way another committee would do it or to the best of its ability, but it's something and cohesive. So yeah, precisely it. The idea is to create templates for us to use. Obviously, anything that is given to us, logos, colors, all of that, we own all of it. But it's about creating a system so that it is easy to implement and that our website can then reflect.
That was time.
Yeah. Let me see if I could share.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So that's basically it. It's a multi-step process. There would be obviously rounds of feedback. I think that this is an opportunity once we get kind of like to those final options, we could probably even open it up to our board members, right? Of, you know, what do you like? What do you dislike? So it's definitely a journey to get there. But I'll leave it there because I know we're at 7:44.
Yeah, and I think you had Barbara as one.
Yeah, I wanted to ask if other community boards have done some of this kind of branding, and if we could see the examples of what they have and how vertically they've done it. As you said, from flyers all the way up to, you know, web design and so forth, and banners, things like that. And if any other community board has tried that, or if not even a community board, even approaching one of these design firms, if they've done something similar to that for another town or some other type of organization, similar semi-governmental organization, comes to mind even something like, I don't know, ASPCA or something, you know, that would have sort of a multi mission and task. So has in your discussion, have you seen any of that, but specifically New York City community boards?
Yeah, I think it was East Harlem told me how they revamped some of the elements and like website. But that's a great question for me. What to ask? I think I'm meeting with CB 2 or 3 in the next week. How vertical it's been, because I know that a lot of that stuff that they've done is applied to their website and maybe a flyer. But I have noticed that there is a disconnect between some of the flyers and logos they use for flyers and then their website. So I'm not gonna say we the first, but for Manhattan, I'm not too sure yet. But I think it's important. I think we all saw Mark Levine's new website, and it's just like chef's kiss, amazing. And that's really the power of design and making sure, like a lot of the ads that they did, even when they were recruiting board members, were reflective of those colors and that identity, and that like fresh look, if you will.
I'd like to make one more comment. A friend of mine is a person who works with a company called Metro Graphics, which specializes in this kind of stuff. And one of their contracts is with Baldor's, the food company. And he told me, because he's in charge of this particular initiative, they're having a client retreat, we call it a employee retreat out in the Poconos. And for this 3-4 day staff development retreat, they're creating, when you talk about vertical branding, something like 20 different items, all to be branded and designed, backpacks, hats, name tags, pens, and it's all being very carefully branded. It's driving him nuts, going back and forth on like, what should the patch on the backpack look like? Oh, can't we have 4-color embroidery instead
Barbara,
of 3-color?
we're at time.
Yeah.
Okay.
But,
all right,
but yeah, it's a lot, and it translates to everything we do. So whenever we have our hats, they're gonna be amazing. Like people are gonna fight to get them.
Yeah.
So
that's how serious this is taken.
yes,
Okay.
yes, I agree. Which is why it was a day one mission. But anyway, I appreciate folks' patience tonight. This is obviously not something we do every month, but I do think it's important to take a step back and look at a lot of what we're doing. And again, like, thank you to Michelle, Ebenezer, Angel, the whole team. It's been a lot of meetings, and we're finding new resources that I was completely unaware of too. So anyway, with that, we'll move on. If there's any other flags that come to mind, please let us know. Otherwise, it feels like we're good to move forward.
So I just want some clarity. Do we have, in terms of the treasurer's report, do we have like consensus that this is how we want to spend our money? Is this a thing that we need to vote on?
It's not something, I mean,
if it's
per
not, then we don't need to vote. But if it's
Yeah.
something we need to vote on, I would like to make a motion that we spend the money in that way, because I think it's a great idea. If we don't have to make a motion, then I'll shut up.
yeah, we don't have to make a motion just because of the amounts and what they are,
Cool.
but I'm glad that there's we did want to bring it up because we think it's important that there is consensus on how we move forward.
And transparency.
Yes, thank you, Angel. All right, I'm not looking at the agenda. Sorry, what's next?
Update on the special committee.
Yes, so reached
10
out
minutes
to
on the clock.
Oath, real quick, reached out to Oath, still haven't heard back in terms of, very similar to what Service Design Studio does, what they do in terms of system design. So I'm waiting to hear back from them. We got 4 out of 5 members, so I put it out in the newsletter, hoping to get another recruit. If not, I'm gonna have to start going through the phone tree. And I also do have to check in with the 4 that have signed up and haven't been necessarily able to in the last week and a half for that. I think that's where we currently are. Liz.
Just a very quick question, to the extent that it may have a budgetary impact. If we're going to do anything like a retreat, which is something that we had talked about, at this point, it's already April. That's clearly not going to happen before July, but I would like to make sure that we put into our next year budget that we fund like a facilitator, a retreat, something like that. So we don't find ourselves scrambling when the time comes.
Yeah, so I have to also meet with both of our council members. So that was my thing, right? Because we only had 3 months. If we knew at the beginning of the fiscal year, then I think we would have been in a great place. But I'm planning to meet with both of our council members so that when we request funds or if we can get funds for next fiscal year, that's on the list.
And that's a good idea, and I encourage you to do that. And also, been on the board a long time, we almost always wind up having a surplus. So I would like very much for the council members to come up with some funding for this for a lot of reasons, including, I think it's appropriate for council members to buy into, quite literally, this idea at this board and at other boards. But my guess is there's probably going to be enough room in our own budget that even if we don't get funding or we don't get as much funding as we would like, we're going to be able to self-fund a decent piece of this.
For sure. Okay. All right, then next item, I guess. Oh, we're on calendars. Sorry, that's me. Let me try to pull them up, but we are looking at May and June. I do want to flag. We have discussed, and as Ebenezer raised, hosting our general meeting hybrid for the month of May and June. So please look at those dates.
Catherine, are you going to be sharing screen, or were they sent in attachments?
If you have it on hand, I'm trying to pull it up. Sorry, I gotta be better about these windows.
They were sent in attachments.
Okay.
Need me to share screen with the.
If you have it on hand, that'd be great. Thank you.
Can you see that?
Yes, thanks.
Is it big enough?
Okay, I'm seeing some head nods, so I think so.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Are there any changes? This looks like we're all in on the usual schedule.
You have a hand from Daryl.
Yes, Daryl.
Yeah, I think you see where I'm going. Yeah.
Yes, you're not here because this is the one that goes out publicly.
Yeah, just making sure. Yeah, we're on the 10th, but yeah.
And you have the same date. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me. What is it, May?
So it's the second Wednesday. Yeah, the 10th.
Oh, so you will always conflict with licensing.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, that's good to know. All right. Yikes. Okay. Anyone else? All right. So that means 23rd would be hybrid at Columbia. We'll be sure to write that on the we'll put it out many times, so definitely putting it on the calendar. Are you? Oh, Angel.
Oh.
I was just going to say, when we do put out the notice about hybrid, I think it's important to highlight the quorum piece so that we actually have in-person quorum to have the meeting. Emphasize that more than anything else.
Yeah, if you have June in front of you, Liz, let's put that, and then let's take maybe 2 minutes, and I think we can maybe offline talk about hybrid.
I actually, yeah, it's fine to have an offline conversation about the exact specifics of the messaging, but Angel is right, and I would just want to echo that. I have a question about June. The precinct community council meetings. I understand that those are not our meetings, but I'm just curious, am I to infer that the 33rd precinct meets on the 4th Tuesday and the 34th precinct meets on the last Thursday, and so they're usually on the same date, but they're not on the same date on 5 Thursday months, or is that a typo?
No, you are correct.
Okay.
The 34th is on the last Thursday.
Got it. Thank you.
I thought it was on the last Wednesday.
Oh, they haven't been on Wednesdays for a while. They used to be on Wednesdays. They moved.
Yes. Okay.
So just remember, the one change I see here, exec, is the 20th because of Juneteenth.
Yeah. You have a hand from Joel.
Oh, go ahead, Joel.
Just a quick question about hybrid meetings. Is the new rules going to apply to the main hybrid meeting?
Rules you mean by the hybrid rules or like which rules?
The hybrid rules, the ones that we discussed earlier in the year.
Yeah, so for us to do hybrid, we have to have quorum. I think last month I was talking a little bit about how like the biggest challenge it's been an in-person quorum. For other boards, at least in the beginning stages of hybrid, is getting that 26 in the room. And so that's something that's going to be a collective effort, not just in sending emails. But I'm gonna ask staff, but also you guys within your committee meetings in May of reiterating our general is in, our members should be in person. Obviously, there are folks we're gonna be asking if you know already you're not gonna be able to attend May, let us know with time. And we didn't get all the responses we needed, but we did get enough of a temperature check through the survey that was sent the last 2 months. That we'll have a good chunk of people present in May and June. I see Jim has a hand. Jim, if you want to respond, and then
I'd also like to raise my hand, but I can't because I'm screen sharing. So
you could stop. I didn't see any other changes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just like to remind us that in one or two of the mailings or emails or whatever, we actually send out the resolution with the hybrid rules, so everyone is aware of them.
Yeah, thank you. Wayne? Yeah.
Have we identified venues for the May and June general meetings? Because having a convenient venue is also a good way of getting people there in person.
Yeah, the easiest ones, Ebenezer got, well, NYP is not available and neither is Isabella, which were always our go-tos. We could use schools technically. However, schools are very strict about your permit. And while I'm really proud of the progress and don't anticipate us going back into some of those crazy meetings, we don't want to risk it so soon. In the year. So, but yeah, Columbia, Ebenezer reached out to both. He's scheduling a walkthrough and being able to hopefully get their like IT teams just so we could have a better understanding of the space. Echo of sound is usually an issue with hybrid. So figuring out what we need to bring in. So if it's like the extra, we have the wireless mics, but if it's just plugging in mic into the laptops where we Zoom so that it can pick up sound. So still working on that. But yes, I think he mentioned the nursing floor on the 7th for June, and it's Rustberry for May. So right on the that 168th Street floor.
You had Liz and then you have Barbara.
Thank you. So the hybrid meetings would apply to the hybrid thing would apply to the general, but the committees would still be meeting on Zoom.
Yes.
Excellent, because I gotta say, as much as I really miss in-person meetings, my participation rate is tremendous. We're getting 50, 60, 70 people at meetings, and the ability for people to make presentations is really so much easier. So I would like to frankly stay on Zoom for the committee. In terms of venues, Holy Trinity Church on Cummings Street between Broadway and Seaman Avenue. They have a beautiful, beautiful space. Their sanctuary is large and they have like a whole AV tech setup in the back. They've got screens. They're very well set up with tech. It's a brand new sanctuary. So they designed all of that with all of that in mind. They have a couple of breakout rooms if that's a need. They are accessible. They have bathrooms. And the pastor there has been very, very open as part of their community mission to host meetings like this. So Ebenezer, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to the office at Holy Trinity. You've locked down venues for May and June, but I am quite sure that he would be open to, September or October or whatever. And I know that the Inwood community appreciates having meetings up in Inwood when possible.
Yeah, if you have the pastor's info or direct contact, send that. We just heard back around the June meeting, but it would be great to have the June in Inwood. Quite frankly, it's already going to be almost 6/8.
You have Barbara, and then I saw Mary's hand. I don't know if you wanted to say.
And then we'll close with Jim because it's already 8:01.
Just quick.
And there's about 25
Just
seconds.
real quick, in the hybrid, if you're member in the hybrid, if you're on Zoom and not in the room, are you listed as present but you can't vote, or you're present and can vote? Which one?
You're present and you can vote.
You can vote.
You're present and you can vote, and your presence is included in the denominator for figuring out whether or not something has passed. But the quorum has to be an in-person quorum. So there have to be 26 bodies in the room. And if there are 4 people on Zoom, that's a total of 30. And you need to have 16 or more people voting yes in order for something to pass.
Got it. Thanks, Liz. Got it.
So it was Mary, and then we're closing with Jim.
Yes. 2 minutes, Mary.
I just wanted to echo Liz's concern about the committees remaining on Zoom. In fact, our committee did a resolution to that effect, or the letter to that effect, actually, that went to the Manhattan Borough President as well as other elected officials to plea for that, because our attendance also has tripled with the Zoom meetings. And those people that are attending would not be able to come to an in-person meeting. So we would lose all those people.
Yeah, Mary, I was gonna say I'm aware, and we've also made MBPO aware that we would, the sentiment across the board, which is why we're only doing the general, is that people would like the general in person and the committee virtual. So.
And I just wanted to say also that I have the pastor at Holy Trinity Church. I have his name and contact information, because I reached out to him for another organization, so I can send that to you.
Okay, I'll call you tomorrow.
I've already done it.
Oh.
You got it?
Look at that. Thank you.
Okay.
Jim?
2 things. Remember, there are rules. If you want to stay home, you just can't stay home if you feel like it. And secondly, technically your camera's supposed to be on the whole time, so that it's like everyone else in the room, I suppose. The other thing is, could you repeat where the hybrid meeting will take place in June?
Where the main one?
Yeah, the physical place.
We got yes from Rusbury. We still have to do the walkthrough, so don't put it on your calendar yet.
He's asking
I thought that was May.
Yeah, May is Rusbury.
He's asking about June.
Oh, sorry, June. Ebenezer.
Might be Holy Trinity.
I forgot. Ebenezer says maybe. Yeah, right now it's confirmed. I think it's Columbia's nursing school building on the 7th floor.
Oh, right. Nursing school, right. Thank you.
But Inwood would be nice. So let's see. Daryl?
Do we pay venues to have the meetings?
That's a great point. We should go for free, but we have, and we can.
I was thinking for Washington Collegiate, but
yeah, I thought about them too, because they're a great space for technology, especially. But the goal, especially here, is free right now. But I'll add that one there for maybe the fall. All right. I think this brings us to thank you everyone for patience. Again, any questions or things that you need if you didn't do the hybrid, we got about 20 responses from the survey. So we have a good idea, pushing for snacks because it's going to be tough to transition without that. Mary, are you next for your report? Or if you're going to say something, then you can go for your report if you'd
I
like.
think because I'm just, trying to, hear everything, and let it sink in. I'm confused again. Where will the meeting be in May?
May's general meeting is at Rustberry.
Oh, Rustberry. Okay,
Rustberry,
okay,
yes.
okay.
At the general, I'll put that on and we'll have announcements.
Right, but since I'm not going to be
Yes, you're not
around,
going to be here.
I need to put it on the agenda, my agenda for our next meeting for the committee.
Okay. Do you want to go with your report since you're already speaking? I know that may not be the order.
I can. Wait a second. I was
I'll put
out of
5
the
minutes on
country.
the clock, Mary.
Okay. I was out of the country for our last meeting, but I can give you the rundown. We had a presentation. Actually, no, I was here for that meeting. Sorry. Presentation from Iman Ramawi, who's now the executive director of the Harlem Independent Living Center. She presented on her actually former job about accessoride and very detailed, a lot of details, which are in the minutes. So I want to encourage people to read the minutes for those details. Our May 4th meeting, we're going to have a speaker from at the MTA speaking about Omni, how to enroll in it, especially for the seniors with the half fare and all of that, because a lot of us don't know how to access that and get to it. We are also going to have a lady by the name of Barbara Bear presenting on very briefly on I'm sorry, brain is not functioning here. Apartment sharing. There's a new not so new program about having young people share an apartment with an older person to give them, assistance, by being present in the apartment, but also the opportunity for, to share the rent and that sort of thing. So she's going to be presenting also at the May meeting. And I believe that's all I have. And just so the committee knows, the executive committee folks know that Joseph Kalinsky will be the acting chair or be in charge of the meetings, etc. for the next 2 months, because I will be in rehab after my surgery. So.
Will you be in a rehab center or at home?
No, inpatient rehab. I'll be at Isabella.
Oh, we'll come visit.
Yep.
You sure we can't have a meeting at Isabella? It would be very convenient for Mary, and then she could go in person. Or you could just have the 40 of us as guests.
Every time that we approach Diane Ashley with anything, she says, no, no. So, however, I'm happy to know her and work with her because I'm getting a private room and I'll have my laptop and my cell phone. So I will be tuning into an occasional meeting, but.
Okay, thank you. And no, she'll be on her robe, on the laptop as needed. All right, so we're gonna go to traffic and transportation. If somebody does have to leave, or just feel free to raise your hand and I'll bump you up.
All right, Debbie, you got 5 minutes on the clock.
Thank you. So for the first time, we did a joint meeting with public safety to focus on traffic enforcement. So it was great to finally do that, something we had obviously talked about for a while. I think people felt good about the meeting. I was disappointed because the NYPD Traffic Enforcement Command did not actually come. However, both the 33rd and the 34th were there, sent good people. And so I think it was a great first step, and I certainly would like to see, you know, that's something that we maybe do once a year. You know, so I think because we didn't have traffic enforcement command there, as much as they did their best to explain it, just sort of understanding what falls under that separate command versus what falls under the precinct personnel that stack against traffic. It's still a little murky to me. But again, lots of questions, lots of feedback. So I think people felt good. I'll obviously, you know, we'll hear from Eli and get, you know, his view from the public safety side. And I guess the other thing I just wanted to highlight was the committee, we had a walkthrough with DOT. Sort of, it was designed to walk from 158th on the uppermost roadway of Riverside Drive, but we also then walked through the whole crazy intersection at 158th and the middle roadway and the upper roadway and Edward Morgan and, you know, that whole mishmash. And a little bit on 157th, because those will ever more sort of be, you know, challenging intersections in a challenging area, given how busy it is, and certainly a six-way intersection is complicated. There's nothing like a walkthrough. I can, even when I think I know what I'm talking about, to actually stand there and look at it is important. I did almost get run over exactly where, you know, we've always known on the very long crossing at 158th, across the two roadways at our Riverside Drive, something that we knew was left incomplete when the other traffic, calming traffic, all that work was done on like the Riverside Oval area. But there was one piece of that people may remember that we didn't take on because we didn't want to change the direction of a street and change something that was two-way into one-way. But it does mean that it's still on the list and needs to be dealt with because it's just crazy. So that was really a neat thing. It was nice to be out there and just walking it. And that's it.
Ellie, you want to tag team there?
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it, you know, your report, Debbie, in any kind of way. So it was an extremely good experience. I think I really haven't had any intersectional meetings from two different committees the way we did it. Leo did a great job. So you've been coaching really, really well. I just like to say that the one update that I like to give is in reference to the 181st Street elevator or the train station incident. I did ask the 34th, and they did note that there were 3 arrests in relation to the incident. So that's all they really could elaborate. So, so I guess are following up on the investigation and charges and stuff. I think that's something that they will continue to work on. So give us a bit of a peace of mind knowing that they did take care of the issue as fast as they did. So that's my report. Thank you, Debbie. It was a great meeting.
Thanks, Eva.
Thank you. This is the second joint meeting we have for the first half of the year. And I think it's always really nice to bring those members together. So I hope everyone had a good time intersecting. And, you know, hopefully this happens more because I know you two especially have, you know, a lot of kind of like cross complaints or issues. So we'll see. All right. Thank
That
you.
was perfect timing.
Yeah. That brings us to, who does that bring us to?
Business development.
Thank you. All right, go ahead, Joel.
5 minutes on the clock, Joel.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Angel. So we had a great meeting in business development. We had 3 speakers. One, Jackie from Cloth from the Community League of the Heights. We had Isidro from the Washington Heights bid, and we had Leslie Velasquez from the Small Business Services. So the purpose of that meeting was for first Leslie from SBS to explain what a bid is, the formation of a bid. She is from the formation bid sector of SBS. She did a great job explaining what the different phases of forming a bid is. And, you know, someone who grew up in New York, grew up in Washington Heights, I didn't know anything of it. So it was extremely informative and put a great detail in the meeting minutes so we can really disseminate that information. And secondly, we had Jackie from Cloth. And this organization is a community-based organization that most of us know. They're trying to build a bid from, I believe it's, I don't know exactly, it's in the minutes, 155th to 170th on Broadway, and expanded east and west on 168th Street. All in all, it's in the very beginning stages, the bid, and we're, you know, they're gathering interest from different stakeholders of that part of our neighborhood. But the most important part of this is our needs assessment, and it's going to be the driving force of how SBS implements this bid into the neighborhood. And then we're trying to get the word out. The needs assessment is going to be a big part, like I mentioned, and just to see what is necessary in this bid. It's truly a good thing. I think it surprised me that we only have one bid in all of Uptown, right? So I think, yes, this is a good start, but Dykeman and 207, why stop there, right? So I will forward the needs assessment to the whole board because it's very important that we do that. Lastly, we spoke to Isidro. Isidro, thank you so much for coming by and explaining what true success is in a bid. Got to see the inner workings of what they do, but I will put it all in the minutes. For next meeting, really quickly, we're gonna have the UCLA University Innovation Lab come by and explain about a program that should be definitely helpful for businesses, especially startups. Kind of a resource. I wouldn't say incubation, maybe incubation, just where startups can go and get some advice, do a business plan, legal services, things like that. So stay tuned for our next meeting. It should be a good one. But yeah, any questions? I see Angel, I think you were first. Or
No, I think it was Wayne Chan.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. I just wanted to share, I think I shared this with you, Joel, and with everyone else, that the efforts that Cloth is undertaking for the bid in Lower Washington Heights is actually sort of bringing back to life an initiative that in a prior job, my organization provided a grant to them years ago to look at that. And, you know, with a bid, you need, I think it's 51% of the property owners to agree to it. And they came within one. They were just one property owner short of making that bid, you know, establishing that bid in the prior round. So this time, you know, with, I guess, some greater participation of property owners, you know, they hope to have success.
Yeah, and it's tough to gather support because most of business owners are busy running their day-to-day. So, and you know, they don't want to be bothered or you can't get a hold of them. So if anybody does know business owner or stakeholders of that area, tell them to reach out to me and I'll connect them with Jackie because it's extremely vital. It makes not only does it help with sanitation, but it also helps with security, with cleaning up the graffiti on these gates, and it makes it easier for businesses to thrive in that area. So if you guys know stakeholders of that business, of those businesses around there, let me know, or property owners. Yes, Angel.
I definitely know a ton of business owners there, so I would be referring those. I've been living in that neighborhood for over 12 years. But my question actually was, where does it extend? It starts from 155 all the way up to what street? You're on mute, Joel.
If you give me a minute, I will tell you exactly.
I understand it's from 155th to 178th.
78th, yeah.
That's a long bid, Isidro, don't you think? That's a lot of area.
It is. I do agree that it is a lot of area. Not only it's all Broadway, but it's also on 168th Street. It extends into Audubon, I believe. So yes, it's a long area. So it's a lot of businesses, but the more businesses that we have, the better we can get to that 51%.
You got Liz and Jim. You're popular this month. Oh, you super popular this month. Liz, Jim, and Daryl.
So that was one question. And then as a follow-up, I hope, I assume you're working with Columbia and with the hospital, because as we know, they are significant property owners. So having their buy-in quite literally would make a material difference in the success of this. I would also encourage you to reach out to the Boricua and the Hispanic Society, the Academy of Arts and Letters. Boricua, I suspect, will be into this. The Hispanic Society, I don't know. The executive director of the Hispanic Society is actually going to be at my committee meeting tomorrow. They're on strike. Their union is on strike right now, so they kind of have a lot going on. I'm not sure I would pitch it to them until they get that figured out. Academy of Arts and Letters, unlikely, but that's a pretty solid anchor institution, and I'm happy to chat with you. You know, if you give me a call later in the week, we can.
Oh, for sure. Thank you. No, I will. I would love to connect. Yes.
Great.
That'd be helpful.
If I may, Joel, because I think this is critical. Liz, both the hospitals and Columbia are in supporting this effort, but the Hispanic Society and the hospital are also nonprofits, which means that they don't pay taxes. Therefore, they don't count on the number of property owners that will be required for the bid. Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, seriously?
Wow. I didn't know that.
Even though they own so much commercial real estate?
Jim gotta go ahead.
All right. Yes, Jim. Sorry. You're on mute, Jim.
Sorry. I don't think it was specifically mentioned earlier, although it may have been. When a business or a property owner becomes a part of the bid has to be funded, and that the funding comes from these people agreeing to have their taxes raised. So that's, I mean, obviously you get services for this, but you know, that's the balancing act. You know, the bid isn't for free. So that's and in fact, it's actually a brilliant structure. I've always been amazed about how clever it is. But that's the complication, and that's, for example, why it doesn't help with the hospital, because they're not taxed. But I'm obvious, you know, they're going to be in favor of it, and insofar as they can be supportive, they will be. But that's the little how it works. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I actually was going to ask a question that to Leslie as to and to Jackie, for that matter. What are kind of the drawbacks? You know, because it sounds like a sales pitch, but I didn't see any backfall. But I guess that's one of them. I didn't get to ask Jackie or Leslie that. But thank you, Jim. Wayne.
Just a quick follow-up to Jim Berlin's point. And it's absolutely critical to point out that, you know, the funding for the bid comes from a special real estate tax assessment. You know, so if you are a nonprofit, or if you're, you know, city or state government, you know, you don't pay taxes. That said, however, property owners who are not obliged to pay taxes can still make voluntary contributions. And I know that, for example, the 125th Street bid, which had so many, city-owned buildings, I think in that case, the state office building and the Apollo, which is owned by this, there may be voluntary contributions made to the bid. So with, Columbia and Presbyterian and even the nonprofits, the museum, they may be willing to do voluntary, because once again, it's a needs assessment. So if there are issues with, safety or, sanitary conditions, or in some cases, bids focus on marketing the area. So depending on what the services provided, the nonprofits, may be all in favor of that.
Yeah, and I think Isidro can speak more about this. I believe that the Washington Heights bid is actually getting a contribution, right, Isidro?
Correct. We get private donations, and also we apply for different grants. But to answer about the drawbacks, Joel, of having bids, is that one, you have an assessment tax that it gets rolled to the property owners. They have to pay higher taxes. And also, bids tend to be, it's a double-edged sword, because bid actually improve the area in a lot of different ways. But by doing that, it raises the rent in the future of merchants. So that's the double-edged sword. We improve the area, but in the future, rent would definitely go up. That's the drawback.
That makes sense, because they're improving the.
Just to prove a point, between San Nicolas and Broadway on 181 has the highest per square footage north of 62nd Street. And that's because we obviously clean out the neighborhood as much as we can, and the property value goes up the roof. So right now, between San Nicolas and Broadway, I don't have a single vacancy, because it's the best spot north of 62nd Street. Shea Shack, it's trying to come up here, and they cannot find space.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Sorry, I'm like, you got me on Shake Shack or something. I mean, hey, but anyways, just to stop right there real quick, because I know we're getting deep into it, but we're still at the needs assessment phase, and I think it's really important to reiterate our role as a board can be, and especially in the fall after we get all our trainings and mapping and tools and all that, promoting the needs assessment is so vital, because that is a big phase. So yeah, feel free at the general meeting to announce it. And if we have the link of it, we can share that more often on the news, on the listserv.
I have the link, and I will forward it to you.
Okay.
I have it in English and in Spanish, so I will send that.
Perfect. All right, I want to keep going. I know it's 8:30. I'm trying to be done by 9 today, so let's see.
Madam Chair, I'll just let you know that next is land use, but licensing is not on the agenda. So just make sure you plug in licensing at some committee.
Wayne, you want to go?
Great, thank you. So actually, just going back to the discussion of, committees meeting together, one of the next joint committee meetings will probably be between land use and housing and human services. I was invited to participate in a conversation that, Housing and Human Services had with the Borough President's Office about the Borough President's Housing Opportunities Plan, and some of the questions they had, but also some of the questions how we might work together. And I certainly think it's a great idea for land use to join forces with Housing and Human Services and raise that with the committee members. And there was agreement that while land use may be interested in some of the zoning related things and what can be built where, we certainly are also interested in the type of housing that's needed and the affordability. And so it makes sense for us to work together to come up with a joint response to the plan, so that, and we've done this in the past, although I don't know if we've done it working so closely together from the beginning. So that's something that we're looking forward to doing, and I have to share the feedback from land use with Housing and Human Services. I have not done it yet, although my colleagues from Housing and Human Services who are now know that we're interested in working with them. We had a briefing on the modifications to the Cumming Street proposal that's going through the, I think, third or fourth and final public hearing at BSA, either the 24th or 25th of this month. And, you know, some of these discussions get a little complicated. We had in a resolution asked the applicant to, you know, outreach to the community and, you know, discuss the project with them. And they took that to mean, you know, focusing more so during the construction phase because of the amount of vibration and disruption that will be caused by any work to the rock. The intent for it was it to be, you know, even during the design phase. However, the Board of Standards and Appeals is actually the agency that's telling the applicant what to do. And the Board of Standards and Appeal has asked specific questions that they want answers to, and they are not requesting the applicant to have public meetings with the community. They did request that they come back to the Land Use Committee. So there is some, you know, confusion there, but also, I mean, I think I've reported in the past that on this application in particular, some of the things that we're hearing secondhand about what BSA is requesting, and then when we reach out to BSA directly, what they tell us are not quite the same. The particular project at the end of the day is really only asking for 3 things. As of right, the project would require 61 parking spaces, and the current design, they can only accommodate 49. So they're looking to have a reduction of 12. As of right, the street wall, the maximum height before the building has to set back along the street is 65 feet. So they're asking for a waiver, so it could be 4 feet, 4 inches taller than that. And then the overall building height, as of right, would be 80 feet. And they're asking for a waiver, so it could be 89 feet, 8 inches. So those are the 3 things they're asking for. And that at the end of the day is what the commissioners of the Board of Standards Appeal will either vote up or vote down. We had a discussion on 101 Cooper Street. There was a request for evaluation that was submitted by a working group of tenants in the building to landmarks to consider it as an individually designated building. It is an Art Deco building, and it is, I think, one of 2 Art Deco buildings that still has the original steel frame casement windows. There are many other Art Deco buildings in the area, but the windows have subsequently been replaced with double hung windows. The architect of 101 is also the architect of the first Art Deco building in the Bronx, which is on the National Register of Historic Places, and it's also an individually landmark building. We passed a resolution supporting the RFE, and that will be presented to the full board for support at the general meeting. And what else did we discuss? I think there was one more thing. So we did the housing plan, we did the BSA, we did the landmark. And that was, you know, basically it. And just on the one more thing on landmark, in May, we will discuss the LPC's proposal to designate 935 St. Nicholas Avenue, which is known as the Duke Ellington Building, as an individual landmark as well. It is already on the National Register of Historic Places. I think it has been since the 70s. And at LPC's meeting earlier this month, it was calendared for consideration. And in addition to Duke Ellington having lived there for, I think, for 30 years or more, Noble Sissel also lived there. And Noble Sissel was part of the team that brought the very first all-Black musical to Broadway, I believe in the 1920s or 30s.
Sorry, Wayne, did the letter of support?
Yeah, so this is not land use related per se, because it cuts across. We've mentioned in the past that the Bond Center from City College had worked with us in the past on our land use planning study, and we're looking to do some additional work with them. They recently reached out to us, the Bond Center, the Colin Powell Center, also at City College, and the Sociology Department are pursuing a HUD grant to work with CB12, I think in some other uptown community boards, but I think they're focused on working with us first to look at certain issues relating to housing, community and economic development. And they are seeking a sort of a letter of support or a letter of, our interest in, partnering with them on this initiative.
Here's it, Jim. And then Joel.
2 minutes, Jim.
Well, this is very short. Anything the board does has to be done as a resolution, which means this letter of support would have to be passed by the board, and I'm sure the board will be thrilled to do it.
And which is why I said it's not really land use. I think it's more appropriate for the executive committee to opine on it, because it cuts across multiple, committees.
Right, but again, there has to be a resolution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's
So
why Catherine reminded me to discuss it.
Let me just make an editorial comment, and I hope you don't think I'm out of place, but watching the last few meetings, the general meetings and these meetings, and seeing the way you young people are working together, I sort of sit back and I go, they've actually learned what I've been teaching them. And I'm just so thrilled. And, this cooperative spirit. And I compliment all of you. Thank you.
We'll get, sorry, wait, just to clarify based on our rules, are we voting on this today, or do you think next month with something in hand? Because I think the deadline's for June.
Well, yeah, the submission deadline is June 1st. And I mean, I'm reading the email now, and they're looking for future collaboration with CB12 and land use. So they are, I guess, focused on us, and it's probably a function of, the continued outreach we've made. And, so, we could propose that, the Executive Committee of Community Board 12 authorize the chair of the board to draft a letter of support for the grant applications submitted by City College's Bond Center, Colin Powell Center, and Sociology Department for the HUD grant earmarked to support applied research on on impact on housing, community and economic development, and the built environment in the underserved communities, which is I guess that's the title of the grant.
All right. I think you have Joel, then Jim again.
Mm-hmm.
Someone should, this is nothing. Someone should second that. And I think Wayne should volunteer to help the chair.
I'd like to second that.
I was gonna do that, Jim. You beat me to it.
No, I can't second it.
Let him, he's listening. Jim, Joel's listening. Go ahead, Joel.
No, I can't second things. I'm not on the committee.
Well,
there you go. He's not on the committee.
Joel has already seconded it because he had
Second it. I don't think we need a vote on it if nobody's opposed.
Well, we should ask.
Yeah, that is procedure. Are there any oppositions? Any abstentions? No conflicts? Okay, so it passes.
Hearing none, it's unanimous. So.
All right, excellent. I know, especially because Jumi is going to be doing the minutes later. All right, so I think that covers it. I can lower folks' hands if there is anything. All right, and then that leads us, thanks, Wayne. That leads us then to licensing.
Thank you, Chair. So we had a very harmonious
next.
meeting.
Sorry, Marielle, do you is it okay if he goes, or do you need to go? Because I know.
Yeah, because it's late. Bedtime.
Yes, I know. I'm like, okay. I didn't want to say it on the record. Put your business out. It's all good.
Just really quickly.
Isidro,
Thank you, Isidro. I appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Good evening. We had a really good meeting earlier this month. We had a presentation from the McCloskey Foster Care Program. They talked about, the foster care program. They gave a really great presentation. I actually encouraged them to come to the general body meeting to kind of, for the 2 minutes during the public session to talk just a little bit about their services, but also encourage people to sign up to become foster parents. Obviously, it's a long process, and they kind of went through a lot of detail what it entails and the support that they give and so on. Especially as a lot of this the children that are in the foster care system, they mentioned in terms of New York City, a lot of them do come from Harlem, Washington Heights, Inwood, parts of the Bronx, and so on. And so having foster care parents that look like the children that are in the system and being able to provide a home for those children until things get better for them. We were also meant to have a presentation from the Department of Veteran Affairs. And unfortunately, it was the representative's her child's bedtime, and so because the foster care presentation went a little too long, it's been postponed to May. So we're looking forward to having that conversation with in May to talk about kind of the outreach to veterans in our district. We spent a significant amount of time then recognizing the things that are happening in regards to the state budget and the affordable housing crisis, but also the right to counsel. We had Councilmember Abreu join us for a little bit, which was really great. We talked about some of the bills that he's putting forward, the two pieces of legislation. So one is kind of requiring, it's 921, requiring the coordinator of the city's Office of Civil Justice to prepare an annual estimate of funding necessary to implement the right to counsel, with the assumption that the attorneys providing legal services are paid at parity with attorneys working for the city law department. And so that's one bit. And then a second one that he's also put forward is around calling upon the New York State legislature to introduce and pass, and the governor to sign legislation that would require the New York State Office of Court Administration to manage the housing docket. So to set an upper limit on how many housing cases can be placed on the calendar per month, so that all tenants are eligible for right to counsel, and that they're able to be offered representation, because of all the backlog that has been happening. And so we as the committee agreed to put forward a resolution in support of this legislation. The timing is a bit odd because we initially, recognizing the timeliness of all of this happening and things with the state budget, we wanted to do it then, but we actually didn't have quorum on the committee meeting, and so that was one problem. And then we had wanted to probably put it forward to the executive this evening, but obviously that unfortunately didn't happen due to time. So I think we'll just have to wait until May at this point, and then put it forward then. The other bit of thing that we talked about is around the high vacancy rates in a lot of the city agencies, and so the impact that has on human services. I think it was in January or February, Emily and I met with Carmen de la Rosa's office to kind of her position in some of this in regards to her chairmanship with that. And so we'll be following up with her office, and we'll most likely be looking forward to put forward a resolution also kind of calling and recognizing the unfortunate impact that the vacancy rates in city departments and agencies have on human services. And I think Wayne briefly mentioned, we had a brief chat earlier this month with MBPO following up on the Manhattan Borough President's housing kind of policy that has been put forward. And so we'll be working on that together. But yeah, read the minutes. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Cedro.
Thanks, Marielle. Bye. Good night and enjoy bedtime. Or wait, Debbie, is that a hand from Marielle?
Yeah, I think you have a hand from Debbie.
Yeah, I would just say, I met somebody who worked somewhere in OMB and for the city who said, well, I guess let me commend Marielle and committee for getting on this issue of how much city agencies are simply not functioning and not able to provide really critical services to the population of New York City. And apparently, the city always knew it faced a demographic bubble from retirements and just given the age of the workforce. And that was, let's say, expected, let's call it 2024, 2025. I can't remember what the number was. And then with the pandemic, you just got a lot of those people who were like, you know what, I'm done. So between the fact that you had this demographic issue that then accelerated and then hit now, the city is still requiring 5 days a week in the office for office jobs. And so there's also been people who have left for other places who wanted a hybrid work environment. So it's sort of a very bad, perfect storm. But I somehow, I sort of commend this coming up in CB12 because me personally, I think it is a horrific issue. I mean, agencies are simply not functioning. I mean, this is going for housing inspections. This is going certainly everything social services, and there needs to be more noise. So I'm all for any noise we want to make on this issue. It's a disaster.
Thanks, Debbie. Appreciate your input. And if there's any, as we're kind of putting together the resolution, if there are any kind of sources or things that you could point us to so that we can look in the right direction and pull that information, that'd be really helpful. But I'm going to go ahead and schedule a chat with the council member's office to kind of start that conversation.
Yeah, no, and she was talking about this last week in the context of budget justice. It's if you take that and then you look at how much their proposals for cuts to the city agencies. So she has a lot to, then we're really just, what are we doing? So she has a lot to say about it.
It's I was gonna say it's 8:47, and we still have Isidro, and I know Noble's hopped on. He has stuff to share. Daryl, can you connect with Marielle about it, or is it burning?
Daryl?
I guess it's not burning. All right, we're gonna go to Isidro and then circle to Daryl and Nobles.
I also wouldn't mind as the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Committee chair making my committee report, thanks.
So sorry. I'm gonna start printing stuff. I'm acting crazy out here. All right, go ahead, Isidro.
So quickly, we had a very harmonious meeting last Thursday. Nothing exciting to report. There was some agenda items that were withdrawn either prior to or at the meeting. We had one incident where one operator was requesting a waiver. That is something that we do not do as a community board, and I would not recommend that we ever do a waiver for the 30-day notice. And that happens when the operator sometimes doesn't file the renewal application on time, and they want to push the community board for a fast resolution and or to say in a way that, we're waiving off other 30-day period notice. So that was it. It was nothing major. Happy that Anthony Viola stepped up in taking the roll call like you used to do, and also writing up the minutes. So I'll be thanking Anthony for his leadership at the general board meeting. And that's it for me. And I really have to step out of the office now because the light's about to shut out. So thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Isidro. Liz.
Thank you. I'm behind on my minutes. Sorry. I'll get them to you as soon as I can. I don't have any resolutions for this month. I just forwarded a flyer to the general inbox about the last meeting that EDC is having for community engagement around the new parks that are being constructed at North Cove and Academy Street. So if you haven't, you don't need to go to all of the meetings. They're having multiple meetings so they can hear from as many people as possible. If you haven't been to any of these meetings, I would encourage you to go to the one on Monday, which is going to be at, I want to say IS 52. But when the board sends out the flyer, you can see it'll be on Monday, a week from tonight. The Hispanic Society is still on strike. Thank you to everybody for support in that resolution. I understand from different folks that I've spoken with at the museum that that was helpful, and was perceived to be, you know, sort of broadly supportive of the museum and the collections, and of, you know, coming together in a positive way that works for everybody involved. So not that it necessarily has helped much, because they're still on strike and there doesn't seem to be any resolution in sight, which is really sad, but who knows? Tomorrow is our April meeting. We're going to be having in attendance the executive director from the museum, who's going to give an update. The museum is reopened, but there are many people who are choosing not to cross the picket line. But the main agenda item for tomorrow's meeting is going to be representatives from Parks Enforcement, from the precinct, from DOT, to talk about safety, quality of life issues in all of the parks sort of broadly. So hoping to avoid a total free-for-all, and hoping to get a little bit of focus on some general district-wide strategies for managing some of the things that are, you know, there's not a lot of news here, but it's useful every year to kind of reevaluate. It's spring going into summer. What are some of the public education and public enforcement things that we can do to just make a good vibe overall in the parks for the many parks users? Speaking of parks, Jennifer Hoppe is leaving her position as Northern Manhattan Parks Administrator and Executive Director of the Fort Tryon Parks Trust. On the one hand, this is terrible. This makes my job as committee chair much more difficult, because she was an excellent partner in government. But Danny Hernandez is the acting, and he's terrific. So I look forward to having, you know, continuing to have a good relationship with parks and good responsive service from the parks management. The good news is Jennifer has been promoted to the Chief Strategy Officer for the Parks Department, with the whole Parks Department, which is going to really give Uptown a voice. I mean, not that we don't already enjoy a pretty solid voice at the Parks Department already, but I think this is actually going to be good for us. So I'm excited for her, even though it is going to make my job a little bit more difficult. And I think, oh, June is coming up with the Uptown Art Stroll. So keep your eyes peeled for just a ton of events, so many events of every possible kind, from 135th Street up to 225th Street. The other thing to put on your calendars is there's going to be several events in the beginning of June for the High Bridge's 175th birthday. So there's going to be like a big event with the mayor and possibly Mayor Bloomberg as well, because he was very active in the funding to bring back the High Bridge. That will be either on June 6th or June 7th. That hasn't been nailed down yet, but there will also be just a whole bunch of events tied to the reopening of the High Bridge, Hike the Heights on that Saturday before. And yeah, it's going to be great. That's it. Any questions?
You have two, Joel, Darrow, and sorry, I forgot Faye didn't do her report either.
Okay.
So
what you got?
Yeah.
I just want to know the time for that meeting for on Monday. Next week.
Let me take the other question, and I'll while I look for that.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, my question was about with the Parks Committee meeting. I know it's tomorrow. Maybe you already did this. Did you reach out to the precinct community councils to come? I know I was at the 34th one this past month, and PEP enforcement did come up.
I did not reach out to the community councils. I reached out to the precinct commanders. So, I mean, Barbara's on the community council.
Not anymore.
Nope. Okay. Congratulations. So no, I did talk to community affairs and I spoke to the precinct commander, and I think how they funnel that through the respective precincts is, going to be up to them. I did tell Maria, so the 33rd is aware of it. I did not reach out to the 34th.
You have Steve's email, I guess, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to share that information with Steve, that would be great. The meeting on Monday, the 24th is at 6:30 at, I'm sorry, not IS 52, PS5. I misspoke. It's at PS5, which makes way more sense because PS5 is like right over where that Academy Street site is.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, and in that email that's being forwarded, there's also a community input survey, which is open until the end of the month. So, if folks aren't able to make it to this meeting and weren't able to make it to the other meetings, there's a very comprehensive survey that people can add their voices to.
And that's time.
Faye?
Yes, hi, thank you, Chair.
5 minutes on the clock.
Well, we're almost there. Yes. Okay. Yes. Our committee has a presentation from the Sylvan Winds organization. The presentation was delivered by what is her name? Sevielana Talabin, who is the artistic director of the Sylvan Winds. She came to introduce her music program, which has been around for over 40 years. And also has been acknowledged by the New York Times. So her organization offers performing programs for children, like, for example, like the Peter and the Wolf, as well as the Voices of the Spanish Diaspora. And I believe the program is intended for middle school to high school students. So far the program, is being offered only at PS4 in our district. And they would like to increase the number of a school in District 6. It may worth to mention that, this organization had appeared under the auspices of Carnegie Hall Lincoln Center, if I'm not mistaken, Mozart Festival, and the Caramore International Music Festival. I think this is something that would be good for our school in District 6. And basically that was the presentation. About more is in our minutes. And lastly, our committee actually made the announcement, which we already saw, about our coming event for the our children and our choices, which is an informative discussion about, public school and charter school option. Hopefully, we might be able to get an update where the both systems are standing and the progress that they had made, especially charter schools since 2010, and what is the present direction that the DOE is planning on having, moving forward. So, and this is my report. I want to thank you.
Thank you, Faye. Any questions for Faye? All right, thanks. All right, we go to, Liz.
I did have one question for Faye, and that was the Inwood Canoe Club is interested in doing reaching out to finding out about youth organizations that they could be doing outreach to as part of expanding their services for kids. Can I send them your way? You're muted. You're muted, Faye. What happened to Faye?
You know what? I mean, apologies. I thought I muted myself. Yes. No, what I said last was that, I thank you. And I say that definitely it's anything that has to do with, recommendation with youth education and any programs I would be glad to work with.
great. Okay, I'll send a joint email to you and to her. Thank you.
As you do. Thank you.
Cool. All right. So off to Darrow and no rolls onto our task forces.
Just real quick from bylaws, we are meeting this Wednesday. We were moved because of the holidays. And we'll be talking about removal of officers as well as meetings. And the rules around that, which is Articles 9 and 10 from the bylaws.
Short and sweet.
Thank you.
Thanks. And
I literally thought I had more time than that, but there it is. Couldn't even get on my formal hoodie.
You want me to stretch?
No, you're good, man. Let's get these folks
Okay.
out of here, but you're good. Couldn't even get on my formal hoodie, but you know, it is what it is. Hey folks, a couple updates from the cannabis task force, a couple really cool things. For one, and I apologize, we made edits to our comment submission for you guys, but my jackass left it in my outbox, so I'll have to send it over to you guys tonight. I have an email drafted. The biggest notes that we had from the first time I had brought to you the comments was to soften the language from being less absolute. That was a big piece that Wayne and also Steve had given me for many different parts. And Angel and I and Francisco, we softened the language many back and forths of commenting sections. And there were also some other things, like Debbie had a couple good points, as did Barbara. So I'm going to be sending this through. I was going to send it as a PDF, but I'm actually thinking, let me send it as a Word doc too, just in case, but I'm not really sure how that would work with all the different trackings and stuff like that. But maybe we can have a separate conversation if multiple people want to track and make changes. But I'll send that through tonight. Secondly, so of course, question about this. Joel, go for it.
No, continue. It's not about that. So you
It's just getting ready. No worries. So again, I'll send that through tonight. Second thing, 420 is coming up. I'm sure we're all cognizant of this and the little smiles and stuff we do whenever we hear 420 come up in business meetings and things. But that's an amazing day to possibly do some community engagement. And so Francisco, with some other folks in the community, reached out to our task force, was wondering if we could, as a community board, bring some type of an educational program to the community on 420. This is to let people know about OCM and the MRTA, what we're doing as a community board. I thought that was a great idea. And so, once we had talked internally with the task force, of course, we had spoken with Angel, considering that Catherine has been out from conflict. We also thought this was a good idea. And so what we're going to do is we have the permit for space on 420. We're going to be bringing in OCM, a couple city representatives, and then also a couple prospective marijuana and medical marijuana companies to kind of educate. There will be no selling here, and we do not have a music permit, but we will have like a small panel with OCM for people to ask questions. We'll have tables set up for people to ask about medical marijuana, and then also some of the other pieces of our MRTA. And we're billing this basically as a community educational and engagement session. And we're going to be doing that on 420 again over on Dykeman in, gosh, I'm so bad at the pronunciation.
Quisqueya.
Thank you, Angel. Oh, Liz, it rolls off your tongue as it usually does. I'm still working on how all those vowels and everything works together on that particular word. I will get that. It sounds so much more beautiful when other people do it though, Liz. I'm not trying to butcher it, but I'll continue to try. But look, we're gonna do it there, and when it comes to it, it's gonna be a very tame event. We're not looking to have music. We weren't able to get that permit, especially within our budget. But I think people will be there for good conversations. I will certainly be there. I have a flyer for it. I'm also going to circulate with the updated comments. I'm going to ask Paola and Ebenezer to circulate that out to the stakeholder list of the executive. But it's going to be a good day, and I welcome anyone to come out. The program starts 5 p.m. to 6:30, but the tables will be set up at 3 p.m. if you just want to come and wander in and discuss. Questions, Joel? I think you're waiting for something else, so I know. But Mary, go for it.
Somehow the notices of the meetings of the task force have not been getting to me.
I don't know how that's possible. I know it's
And
possible. I know it's possible because you're not getting them. I sent them on email. I know that we like had a call that you weren't able to sign into, I think. Or maybe you'd seen the thing late. I
no, but
don't,
I didn't get the notice. There
which
was
is
notice,
like,
there was an email, and there
yeah,
was no information about it, what it was all about.
gotcha. Okay. Maybe we can talk offline just because I'm not sure technically how that happened, but I've been using the email that you've been responding to on other notes. So perhaps there's something else, but Mary, the funny thing, one of the reasons why we were like, look, we need to make sure that we have a good balance of one, state and local officials here, and then also, prospective potential medical marijuana and retail folks coming in, just talking about like what their process is going to be, is because of your question when we first went through the comments in terms of being more specific about some of the regulations around, how far from a school, blah, 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 because that's probably most of the questions that are going to come from the community. And so we wanted to make sure that we have that not only as very accessible for people with the tables, but also we're going to be having a panel with OCM folks on it and a Q&A session with it. And so like that was a big piece of this community engagement we wanted to do.
Okay,
Sorry
but I
for
don't
that
have any
big thing.
information about this event on the 20th.
I
And I'm
will
supposed to be
forward
on
it
the
to you and
task
I'll
force.
follow up. I'll forward it to you and I'll follow up with a call just to see what's going on with the tech. But I'll forward it to you and I'll follow up with a call like right after. I'll send you a
Yeah, 'cause
text.
I haven't received anything in a long time.
All right. Anyone else?
I
Thank
think
you.
that's
Angel, do you want to add anything? Because I've
I
been
just-
working very closely with Angel on this. Just we're pretty excited. It's going to be pretty good.
No, I think you covered the bases.
Thank you.
You have a hand from Michelle Lee.
Yeah,
Yes,
sorry about that.
that's okay.
I know you mentioned there's the difference between the medical marijuana and you
Recreational.
mentioned talking about that during. Yes. Sorry, yeah, my internet's been so terrible today. Yeah, so can you speak to me about like the differences between those within the law, the current New York City law, and kind of
Sure.
what you're looking to educate us about on 420?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are many differences in the in the regulation between medical and recreational. For one, medical has been legal. Well, I'm not going to say like legal in our state. Maybe it is legal. It is, medical marijuana is legal in our state, but still Schedule 1 federally, of course. Legal in our state for quite some time now. And it's been a way for us us being as a state to manage mental health and other ailments, physical ailments, so on and so forth. There's a very strict type of approval process to get a license for that, but it's also not as inaccessible as people might think. If there is some, like if people want to get off of prescription drugs, for instance, and start using medical marijuana to ease those things. And so they might not think it's accessible to them because they think they have to get some mental health, there's something wrong with their mental health or something like that. It's not always the case. And so folks might want to have those kinds of conversations. And having the right people there to have that specifically for medical marijuana gives people another option to retail, which has been slower to roll out in our neighborhood for those folks that are eligible, of course. Does that answer your question? So it'll be deeper.
Got it. And it'll be deeper just on the medical marijuana for the
We're
event.
looking to have a table specifically for medical marijuana, local folks, like knowledgeable local electeds, or not electeds, but local representatives that kind of understand the process of medical marijuana. This could be within like the city function, or assist the city function in the multiple different agencies. We're still looking for that one person right now, but we have we're pretty sure we're gonna have someone there to represent it.
Thanks for explaining that.
No problem. You on mute, Angel?
Yeah, I was just saying that's time on that one.
Thank you.
Joel.
So thank you, Nobles. I appreciate your updates. I understand that there is 2 dispensaries right now in
Manhattan.
In Manhattan, right? Now, and correct me because I'm trying to wrap my head around this. I know they're able to sell marijuana currently, but there's no distributed license or no rather delivery license. How are they able to get their supply is my question.
Ooh, okay, it's a couple different things in that question. There's about 3 different parts, but I'll be very quick with it. First part is, yes, you're correct. There are two retail marijuana locations in Manhattan right now.
No, there's 4.
There's 4 now. As of what, like last
3
week?
in Manhattan, 1 in Queens.
Oh, okay, so 4 in the
They're all in the
city,
village.
3 in Manhattan. They're like in and
The
around
other one's in
village from
Jamaica,
what
Queens.
yeah.
Good grades.
Yeah. Well, look, and then there's a lot of gray market, which is like we're dancing around the issue, and that's a whole other issue in itself. But the 2 that are allowed to sell it, I don't know what their distribution methods are. I do know from a licensing perspective, if you are on the supply side, you have to have a certain license. If you're on the sell side, retail side, you have to have a certain license. You cannot have both. And so there has to be some distribution license, which is not the sexy part of this entire thing. And so many people don't really look to that they're already working with as a case for the chain. That's at least to my knowledge. Everything that they've done is on the up and up. I know there's other people on this call that probably have more knowledge of that. You can take it offline because I'm sure I'm out of time. But these are great questions that I'm sure they're going to come up from the people, when we have Q&A with the OCM folks in the panel. It's like, why is it that we have tons of gray market in this neighborhood, but yet I've only heard we have 4 in the city? And they can answer that question as well as all day at their table.
I will be there. Thank you.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Excellent.
And that's time.
Thank you.
All right, perfect. Is there anyone with any old or new business?
You have a
Sorry,
hand
Mary,
from
go ahead.
Mary.
As I keep bringing up every time that I think about it, I want to know if there's been any information yet about Marion James, who was supposedly assigned to my committee since September, that I have not seen at a committee meeting, and she's marked absent for all these months. I hope that that's on record, because she should be getting some kind of a letter if she's agreed to be on the committee. And if she's not on the committee, then I need to know that, because I'm tired of every single month marking her absent on my on the minutes when there needs to be a decision.
Yeah, since we spoke, I think, what was it, Friday, Thursday? I haven't been able to reach her since. I haven't just had the time to because of work, but it is on my to-do list. And I did reach out to the office, not just in your case and committee, but just across the board for attendance records, just to get a sense. So yes, thank you for sharing for the record. I hope to have an update for you very soon.
Which I won't be able to deal with because I'll be in.
But I will let Joseph know though, in time for the next aging committee for sure.
But I need to know too, because I'll be still editing the minutes.
Okay, so I'll email you both then. All right, is there any old or new business? Is there a motion before we hit the 15 mark?
I motion.
To what? To adjourn? Okay. To adjourn. All right, so it was from Angel, seconded by Liz. Thank you all for the patience tonight. We got so much out and talking a lot, so it was good. I hope everyone has a great evening and rest of the week, and see you
Wait,
back on Zoom
before we
soon.
go, can you just, those links that you put in the chat, do you mind also emailing them? Because once the meeting ends, we're gonna lose those links.
Yeah, if you'll allow me to till maybe tomorrow, so I can email it with the full proposal.
Yeah.
And I can send it with the proposal from Service Design Studio, so you guys can take a look at it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right,
Thank
bye.
you.
So,
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye. Good night.
Good night.